It's another week. It's Steelers week, and we're going to have a long discussion about how they're going to get there because they're not going to be at full strength. We have news tonight. You guys are going to find that out here coming up shortly on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Well, folks, some updates. Not the kind that we wanted to get either.
No, definitely not. Although I will say it's going to be easier for these players than it was for the last ones.
Yeah, I think so. That time frame is going to be critical with the new rules in place. What happened, if you have not heard it, is Travis Kelce, Chavarius Ward, and Harrison Butker that tested positive. They are now on the COVID list. They are going to be in a tough spot, but now need one negative test, as I understand the rules, in order to get back and viable because they are, at least Travis, I have confirmed, is vaccinated. If that's not true for everybody, then that's going to change things. But,
well, considering the Chiefs, I was just going to say, considering the Chiefs are 99% vaccinated, I would imagine Ward and Butker are as well. Obviously, we can't guarantee that right now, but that would be my guess. Regardless, it sounds like, and the interesting thing that is really perplexing to me is that Chris Jones and Willie Gay and sorry, I'm forgetting the third person.
Josh Gordon.
There you go. Thank you. Josh Gordon, who tested negative or tested positive last week, have to go through a more stringent regimen to get back because it doesn't apply to them because they were COVID tested and positive before the new rules went into place.
Right. And Matt Derrick is scratching that down. He thinks there may be an option there. There's an appeal at some point or something like that. So we'll have another update for you tomorrow as well. But this puts a dent in what they want to try to do. Give me your thoughts about how this affects the game plan. And I'm going to update my battery on the camera there.
Okay. Well, my thoughts are that, nice little background. My thoughts are that you look at this game and they can win it without Travis Kelce. They actually signed a kicker to the practice squad last week, which I think was extremely smart. And maybe they were just trying to make sure that they would be in a position to be in a better spot. With L'Jarius Sneed coming back, I think they can get past without Ward for a game. I honestly am looking at this in a situation where I think all three players are probably back. I think that Chris Jones can be back. I think Willie Gay can be back, and Josh Gordon can all be back this coming game and all play against the Steelers because they are more lax circumstances now. They just have to test negative. Sorry, they just have to test negative once, not twice, and they just have to have no symptoms. From what I have read, it seems like most of the players, about 80% of the players, are asymptomatic. So my guess is that's going to apply to most of these guys as well. And I don't want to go too deep into this, but race does play a little bit of a part when it affects when we talk COVID. It just doesn't seem to be hitting the Caucasian players near as hard is all I'm going to say. I'm not trying to say anything bad, but that's just the reality of the situation. So considering it's Kelce and Butker, I would think that they have a better chance. Not saying that, Chavarius Ward doesn't, but it's just one of those things.
Yeah, let's hope in all their cases that it is, and I know they're all positive, so it's not like it's a close contact or anything.
And I hope they're all asymptomatic. I hope they're all fine. I'm not trying to say anything about that. I'm just trying to say that when it comes to the science, it seems like it can affect minorities more than the majority. So you would hope that it's not going to affect them, but there have been a couple of cases where it has affected people. So we'll see.
Yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully everybody is not only asymptomatic but easily recovered. There are some people that just barely even feel the thing. So let's cross our fingers that it's that end of the spectrum in terms of like the severity of it, because the other aspect of this is even if you test negative and you've cleared the virus from your system, the lingering effects can still be,
absolutely
gross fatigue and everything, stuff that would keep you from playing, not just, on the field, but keep you from playing at a level anywhere close to what you're used to.
Right. And of all the games left in Kansas City's schedule, I guess if I was going to lose Kelce for a game, this is probably the game that I would pick. Yeah. I do think that this is the best opponent for them to be shorthanded if they're going to be shorthanded. I would not want this against the Bengals. I would still feel okay about it against the Broncos, but I wouldn't want it against Cincinnati. So
I can completely understand that. I think it lends itself towards changing the style of play. Now, again, we could get these players back later in the week, so we don't know 100%, but I think we need to take a look at how they can adjust to these particular losses if they do stay out of the game, as well as getting some of the players back. I think they can turn to the power run game a little bit more. And you guys listen to podcasts for the power of knowledge. They might as well use it out on the field as well. You can switch to Boost Mobile and power up for saving money as well, because Boost has a free 5G iPhone and you can listen to all the latest episodes, including this show. And they also give you the power of 3 unlimited lines for just $30 a month, so your family can take advantage of it all as well. And it's all built on one of the largest of America's 5G networks. All you have to do, switch over to Boost Mobile and find out. You get a free Samsung A32 5G when you sign up at America's largest 5G network to save power, to save knowledge, and everything else. All you have to do is go sign up. Free phone is limited to new customers and 1 per line. Additional restrictions apply. Offers and coverage may not be available everywhere. You'll have to check that out on all phones and networks. See boostmobile.com for more details. And at the same time, you might as well sign up, because you have an opportunity here that you're going to be able to get into, I think, a really unique situation with On Location, because they have a great package of not just a Super Bowl experience, but all kinds of additional experience as well that you can't really get anywhere else. And at the end of the day, it comes down to spending that, whether it's with the NFL legends, with 5-star restaurants and hotels, like anything that you can put together. All you have to do is go check it out and embrace that. They are the official hospitality partner of the NFL, and you can find them at onlocationexp.com/SB56. That's onlocationexp.com/SB56, and you can get into the action there. I think you might have a good time getting on that location, particularly for that Super Bowl. I think people would enjoy that. So check them out and see what you can get going On Location. Now, On Location, the building is a little bit different, and hopefully they get some of those players back into it. Knock on wood. We won't know, honestly, until we know.
In a way, though, I was just going to say, in a way, though, I almost would be okay with Kelce missing this game. He's been, I think, a little dinged up, and I think that could force them to try to get Noah Gray involved in the offense, and I think that could be a benefit.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. I know some of you all don't think that Noah deserves that chance. Well, that's what he was drafted for. So he not only deserves it, he needs to live up to that. Not a guy that I think has been featured enough. We've seen him kind of spark a couple of times, and with some of the other losses, with Josh Gordon not being out there, with Jody Fortson's injury, like, you need someone else to step up, particularly this week. Now, all of the standardized blocking stuff is going to be Blake Bell. That's not really even a question. They're going to roll that out. I, for one, want to see Gray out there. I also want to see Mike Burton in the H. And I think after his last performance, I'm not just like spitting in the wind here. There's a legitimate reason to get him on the field more, right? If you have to make up for that tight end position, you might as well roll with the H's. See if you can get something creative going.
Ryan running with it's, they did it close enough last time. Might as well go ahead and continue it. Right? Yeah. Why doesn't that shock me? No, and I can't say that I would have a hard time with that. I think when you look at this game, though, I think Kansas City's in a good spot to be able to beat Pittsburgh. I don't like saying this, but Pittsburgh was in a little bit of a way gifted that game against the Titans with as many turnovers as the Titans had. Don't get me wrong, Pittsburgh forced them. I get that. But at the same time, if Tennessee doesn't turn over the ball, that's a completely different ballgame. Pittsburgh is not a good team right now. I do think that this is a team that Kansas City should be able to beat as long as they are able to have a healthy team. And that's going to be the big question, because I would imagine that this isn't the last we hear of COVID this week when it comes to the Chiefs.
Yeah, I have to think so as well. And so really right now, we haven't gotten an update, folks. And this did happen late in the day. So clearly testing is still going on, and we're getting notices a little bit after the fact. Hopefully they've entered the protocols. And I know that Rick Burkholder is one of those leading the way in the NFL about how to treat these cases. And hopefully they can keep everybody isolated enough once you find out. The key is how many guys have you spread it to before you even find out the first positive test. That's that incubation period is the problem. So knock on wood, they can keep this from spreading more. Interesting, though, that it's not at Chris Jones's position group, so it's not somebody that he's hanging out with there. There was a positive test from the Chargers team as well this week. So
multiple.
It does look like Oh, what did it end up being? Multiple? Okay.
Oh, there's a bunch of guys
doesn't
that
look like necessarily in the room in this team. Like you are getting exposed to other players around the league.
Yeah, Bosa. There's word that Eckler's tested positive, though he wasn't put on the list. There was 5 or 6 different Chargers, so I would imagine that there's going to be more Chiefs players. I've read rumors that there are more Chiefs players, but there's nobody that's really putting any names out there right now, so who knows who it's going to be. The one thing I will say is that in Kansas City's position, is it going to be rough? Does it stink looking at the fact that they got the number 1 seed and now who knows how many players are going to be without? Yeah, it's not going to be fun. But, even if they end up losing this game, they're still in great position for the playoffs, and that's what's important. And you could also make a case that if they're going to get COVID, which it looks like that's starting to go through teams right now, that maybe this is the time to do it before the playoffs because, you're going to end up having how many players go on the COVID list. And, you would think you'd have some kind of immunity over the next couple of months if you had it now.
You would hope, although these are all breakthrough cases with the vaccinated players. So I think it does go to show you like the difference between, say, the base virus, Delta, and now Omicron. It's just, while luckily from everything that we're seeing in terms of the medical research is that Omicron is not as deteriorative. So your symptoms aren't as bad. So hopefully that means that once you do get it, that these players can bounce back faster. But it is quite a bit more contagious. I think that's part of this equation as well. So let's hope.
And I would agree with that completely.
That these, I certainly hope that these breakthrough cases can be isolated enough so it just doesn't spread like wildfire, because evidently in closed populations, it seems to move pretty quickly. So if they get some guys back, they certainly need L'Jarius back. And I know he's still dealing with an internal conflict in his own personal life, but at least it's not a COVID related issue.
Yeah. And I guess, but with him being away from the facility and being around all these other people, you have to wonder how much that is going to play into things. And if he was exposed. So there's a lot of things that are going to be going on over the next couple of weeks. And you look at some of these other games that were impacted with 10 or 15 different guys going on the COVID list and teams that are still having to play through it, that could decimate a team. The nice thing is Kansas City's gotten through their worst part of their schedule. So if it happens this week, and I'm not trying to say I'm not worried about the players, I am, but if it happens this week, it's one of those games where I still think you have the ability to win as long as you have a couple core players. Sorry about that.
Yeah, and that really what it boils down to. We'll take a look at that and what this changes on the other side of the ball here. But if you're going to lay some bets here, I think you ought to do it at one particular place.
BetOnline has you covered all season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football season continues the march to the playoffs, and the Chiefs are definitely marching on right now. In fact, I think I saw that they just put some tickets on sale for the playoffs, so be sure to check that out. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, and any kind of prop bets that you want to put on any of the games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.
I'm betting that this is going to be a little bit more difficult than we thought it was. But I will say this. The cornerback position is certainly one that you got to pay attention to, because while Chase Claypool has not had the sophomore outing that he wanted, he is still a threat. Like you mentioned yesterday, Deontay Johnson is still a threat. Even James Washington got going a little bit last week. And that's all with a quarterback that seems to be having more and more difficulty, throwing his bag in the car, let alone anything else.
But I would say that if you get Chris Jones back and you don't have a huge outbreak on the defensive line, I think you're going to be in a much better position going up against a Steelers line that isn't that good. I think that they're okay. But Chris Jones coming back to this defense would make a huge impact on this defense. And if they get Willie Gay back, that's a huge boon as well. So I think that you can still play well as long as you don't have a huge outbreak. I mean, if they end up losing 10 to 12 players, that's a whole nother ballgame, and we'll have to address it then. But at this point, we just don't know.
So Najee Harris, I think, averaged a yard and a half on the ground the other day. So Chris will definitely help that as well. And if they have to lean that direction, I think that plays in what the Chiefs need to do. It is then about making sure that you get off and you don't have to run this comeback thing. I almost am worried that this is a little bit of a letdown. And with all this back and forth with the roster changes, I don't want them to lose sight of that. And so this is the point. You have to finish well. You have to stay vigilant. You have to stay focused.
Yeah, and you have to stay vigilant when it comes to where you go and what you do, and that's kind of what they're dealing with. That's kind of what really the entire NFL is dealing with right now. Is that unfortunately, COVID is still here to stay. We hate talking about it. We hate having to tell you about it, and we're not medical experts, so I apologize for anything that comes out trying to make us sound like we are, because we're not. But the reality is that it's the real world. It's the reality of the NFL, and I did think it was really interesting to see that a lot of the players would prefer to not even be tested. That was something that came out over the weekend. Was a lot of the players would prefer, if they're asymptomatic, that it's just not they're not tested and it's not a big worry. So we'll see how things progress. I think that the NFL is going to obviously has shown that they're going to push on, but I don't think Kansas City should be in a position where they should be expecting to get their game moved because of COVID tests. But
yeah,
it's hard to know
to this point. It is, and you never know what can happen. And luckily, the patients aren't running the asylum, because that would be, I think, a lot more problematic. And I think you'd be more apt to be in a situation like Cleveland is. So let's, knock on wood, be happy about that. But as they get ready for this, they have to adjust, I think. I don't think that you can kind of sit back. I think just the gravity of the situation makes me feel like you have to be more aggressive early. Go set the tone and try to establish that lead, not necessarily set up the game, like almost the old school game plans where you see an exploit on film, you just go attack that in the first 15 rather than what we have been seeing. And I've been very happy with kind of the setup phase that it allows for.
Yeah, and I do want to throw this out there because I don't think we've talked about it on the podcast. It came out the other day. Mitchell Schwartz talked about this, and I think he was tweeting at Matt Derrick, where the first 15 is actually just a first and second down thing. So, if they get to third down, they're calling from a whole nother sheet. Mm-hmm. That's interesting, because then it really makes you think about how things change based on, situations. And it makes complete sense. So don't get me wrong in that regard. But it's just interesting to know that just because they run 15 plays doesn't mean they've all been through all their 15. Right. If they got to third down a couple of times, then more than likely they still have 3 or 4 plays left on the play sheet.
and that's what's important, because you need those options, and it is so situational as you get through it. And I think that also allows for, you got to know where Micah Fitzpatrick is on the field at all times. But outside of that, I'm not sure that secondary makes you too nervous to not try to push some things early, again, to capture that league and take command as early as possible in this game.
I would be curious to see where Joe Hayden's going to line up, because I think that could – I don't think he's the greatest corner, but I think he's better than some people give him credit for, and I think he's probably one of their better corners. But he's not a shutdown guy. I mean, he's not the guy that he used to be. So I think that kind of plays into it a little bit. And I still think that the matchups favor Kansas City, because Andy Reid's going to find ways to get people open. So I think that's going to also work in their favor. You look at this Chiefs offense, it's going to depend, obviously, who's going to be available. If they have their full offensive line available, I feel pretty good regardless of who their skill players are, for the most part, to be completely honest with you. If they can protect the QB, regardless if it's – even if it has to be Chad Henne. And no, I'm not saying Mahomes is tested positive. That is not at all what I'm saying. I'm just saying if Henne had to play because something happened with Mahomes in that regard, I would feel good. I would feel okay about it, because I think that the offensive line would be able to give him the time, and he's shown that he can operate in this offense.
Yeah, and that's, I think, is what it's going to come down to. Obviously, the biggest matchup for me is going to be Lucas Niang trying to fend off TJ Watt. Let's see what that status is. We'll get into that with Matt tomorrow. We'll be back with you, folks.
And that's all assuming Watt is going to be able to play.
Right. We should get an update on that tomorrow as well. And folks, we know it's a holiday weekend, but we'll have shows for you all week this week in preparation for it, because while we enjoy our Christmas holiday, the Chiefs do play the very next day. So we will keep that very high on the radar. So we appreciate you taking the time. We'll be back with Matt tomorrow. Then we will have some more entertainment for you. I think Chris Carter's in our future here, coming up pretty quick. For those of you who listen to me over on the Locked On NFL show, I think you'll recognize that voice. Thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to hearing that one. And we hope you guys have a great night. We will talk to you tomorrow.